In 1975, the music industry had a set of unwritten rules. Singles should be 3 minutes long, they should have a chorus, they should be radio-friendly, they should not include a mock operatic execution scene halfway through. Freddie Mercury broke every single one of those rules with a 6-minute song that had no chorus, 3 completely different musical sections, and a structure that nobody in the history of popular music had attempted before. Every executive who heard it said it would never work. Every radio station that played it was immediately overwhelmed with listener calls asking to hear it again. Bohemian Rhapsody did not just break the rules, it made the people who wrote them look small. This is how it happened. Freddie Mercury had pieces of Bohemian Rhapsody for years before the song existed. Fragments of melody, scraps of lyric, chord sequences that didn't belong to anything yet, all of it written on whatever paper was nearby and kept in a folder he carried with him. People who knew him in the early 70s described him sitting at a piano and playing sections of something that wasn't finished, something that didn't quite fit together yet, something he clearly believed in even when it had no shape. Mercury was a formally trained musician. He had studied at Ealing College of Art and had a deeper understanding of music theory than most of his rock contemporaries. That training is audible in Bohemian Rhapsody. The way the sections modulate between keys, the way the operatic middle section is structured like a miniature composition in its own right, the way the ballad opening gives way to the hard rock closing without ever feeling forced, all of this reflects a musical intelligence that went far beyond 3 chords and a dream. By 1975 he had enough fragments to bring to the band. He sat down at the piano at Rockfield Studio in Wales and played them what he had, stopping occasionally to describe what was missing. And here, darlings, this is where the opera section comes in. And the band listened, slightly bewildered, and trusted him completely. Rockfield Studio in Monmouthshire, Wales is where Bohemian Rhapsody was recorded in the summer of 1975. The band had booked 3 weeks. They used all of it. The ballad section and the hard rock section came relatively quickly. The band were experienced enough by this point to lay down solid performances efficiently. It was the operatic section in the middle that consumed the sessions. Mercury, May and Taylor built those harmonies layer by layer, voice by voice, recording the same lines over and over, adding parts, stacking them, creating a choral effect with just 3 voices that would normally require a choir of dozens. By the time they were finished, that section alone had been recorded so many times and layered so heavily that the master tape had become transparent. The magnetic coating was literally wearing thin from being passed over the recording heads repeatedly. Engineer Mike Stone warned them they were close to destroying the tape entirely. They stopped when they had what they needed, which was, in retrospect, exactly right. Producer Roy Thomas Baker has described the playback of the completed recording as one of the most extraordinary moments of his career. Sitting in a room and hearing Bohemian Rhapsody finished for the first time as a complete thing, he said he knew immediately that nothing would ever be quite the same again. EMI did not want to release Bohemian Rhapsody as a single. Their reasoning was straightforward and, by the standards of the industry in 1975, entirely rational. 6 minutes was double the length of a standard single. Radio programmers worked to strict formats. Disc jockeys would never play something that long when they could play 2 shorter songs in the same time. It would be commercial suicide. Queen and their manager John Reid disagreed. The argument went back and forth, and then Mercury took matters into his own hands. He gave a copy of the recording to his friend Kenny Everett, a DJ on Capital Radio in London, with strict instructions that it was for personal listening only and was not to be broadcast. Everett played it anyway. He played it 14 times in 2 days. Listener demand was so overwhelming, the switchboard lit up every time it aired, that record shops began receiving requests for a single that didn't yet exist. People were coming in and asking to buy a song they'd only heard on the radio, desperate to own something they couldn't yet purchase. EMI released it the following month. It went to number 1 in the United Kingdom within days and stayed there for 9 weeks. Mercury never fully explained the lyrics to Bohemian Rhapsody. In interviews, he described them as a collection of random rhyming nonsense and deflected more serious questions with a smile and a change of subject. The band members have given slightly different accounts over the years. Brian May has suggested there is a personal meaning connected to a significant moment in Mercury's private life, but has declined to be more specific out of respect. What is clear is that the lyrics are not random. They are too carefully constructed, too deliberately strange, too precisely emotional in the right places to be accidental. The narrator confesses to killing a man, says goodbye to his mother, faces judgment, and then after the chaos of the operatic section arrives at a kind of exhausted resignation. Nothing really matters. Any way the wind blows. Whether the song is about Mercury coming to terms with his sexuality, about a crisis of identity, about something else entirely, it has always been large enough to contain whatever the listener brings to it. That is perhaps the most remarkable thing about the lyrics. They are specific enough to feel personal and open enough to feel universal, which is the hardest thing in songwriting to achieve, and Mercury achieved it, apparently without trying. The operatic middle section of Bohemian Rhapsody remains one of the most audacious things ever placed in the middle of a pop single. It arrives without warning, shifts the entire mood of the song, introduces characters, Galileo, Bismillah, Scaramouche, who appear briefly and vanish, builds to a moment of almost operatic grandeur, and then drops away just as suddenly to make room for a hard rock section driven by Brian May's guitar. Mercury was an enormous opera fan. Montserrat Caballé, the Spanish soprano who later recorded an album with him, said he had an extraordinary understanding of operatic technique and structure. The middle section of Bohemian Rhapsody is not a parody of opera. It is a genuine engagement with it, a rock musician using operatic form not as a joke but as an emotional tool. The shift from the operatic section into the hard rock section, the moment when May's guitar comes crashing in, is one of the most dramatically effective transitions in rock history. Every time, no matter how many times you've heard the song, that moment still hits. Bohemian Rhapsody was 17 years old when it had its second life. The 1992 film Wayne's World used it in a scene where Wayne, Garth and their friends headbanged to it in a car, and the effect was immediate and enormous. A generation that had been too young to experience the song on first release discovered it all at once, simultaneously, in cinemas across the world. Mercury had died 3 months before Wayne's World was released. He never knew what the film would do for the song. He never saw the cues at record shops when the re-release charted again 17 years after its first run at #1. He never heard a new generation singing every word back. The headbanging scene in Wayne's World is one of the most effective pieces of music licensing in film history, not because it was strategically placed, but because it captured something true about what the song does to people. You hear it and something happens to you, something physical. The film just showed everyone what they already knew. Bohemian Rhapsody has now been streamed over 2 billion times. The music video, made for a reported £4,000 in 1975, is considered the template for every music video that followed it. The 2018 biographical film of the same name grossed nearly $1 billion at the box office and introduced the song to yet another generation. It has been covered in every conceivable style. It has been performed at every scale, from school talent shows to stadium tours. It has appeared at sporting events, in political rallies, at memorial services, in moments of collective joy and collective grief. It is one of those rare cultural objects that seems to belong to everyone equally. And at the center of it is a 6-minute record that every executive said would never work, recorded by a man who carried fragments of it in a folder for years, waiting for the moment it would finally be ready to exist. Freddie Mercury died in November 1991 at the age of 45. He had been diagnosed with AIDS the previous day, though he had known for some time. The statement his publicist released was characteristic of him: dignified, precise, entirely on his own terms. He left behind a song that will outlast every person currently alive who has heard it. There is a version of the story of Bohemian Rhapsody where it is a story about an eccentric genius ignoring the rules and getting lucky. That version underestimates it. The truth is that Mercury spent years developing fragments of this song before he was ready to make it, that the band trusted him completely even when the concept made no rational sense, that the production team worked until the master tape was nearly destroyed to get it right, that a DJ broke the rules to play it because he heard something in it that the executives couldn't, and that an audience responded not because they were told to, but because the song reached something in them that was already there, waiting. Bohemian Rhapsody is not an accident. It is the result of an extraordinary musician working at the full extent of his talent, surrounded by people who believed in him, refusing to accept that something unprecedented couldn't also be something loved. Nothing really matters, except it turns out this. If you enjoyed this, subscribe for more stories behind the songs that changed everything. And tell me in the comments, when did you first hear Bohemian Rhapsody and what did it do to you?